you're fine. No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we reconvene? I am made to understand that Mr. Wayne Chin, President of the Jamaican Employees Federation, is unavoidably absent, and as such, we'll move into our presentation with Brian Gonzalez. So Brian is an applied AI and workshop strategist focused on ensuring the AI economy creates opportunity for everyone. Over a 25-year career at Intel, he held senior global leadership roles, led multinational teams, and directed education and workforce initiatives across 30 countries. And in a conversation with him, he has traveled to over 102 countries. I volunteered myself to be a gopher. I pack bags pretty well, and I don't take much space. He then said to me his wife is not a traveler, so there is a possibility, so giving God thanks. He has expanded across all technologies and has strengthened the connection between learning, innovation, and economic opportunities. In our side conversation also, he also shared his age, and I quite frankly believe that because he's in AI, his age was recorded in AI, because what he communicated to me, definitely I'm not seeing that on him. So ladies and gentlemen, trusting that you had a good lunch, please put your hands together and join me in welcoming our next presenter, Brian Gonzalez.
We good? All right. You know, disclosure, yeah, I'll put it a little bit there. Can you guys hear me okay? Disclosure is a dangerous thing. I should have been more careful. I stepped on the landmine. Thank you very much. So anyway, it's such a pleasure for me to be here. And again, I did travel to over 100 countries. I do count the Vatican as a country, so give or take. But it's not so much where I've been or how many times, is how many opportunities I've had to engage in learning. In every one of these countries, I know I got more out of it than I gave. So I'm still at a deficit in my older age. And when you look at all the things that I've done, I think it's more about endurance at times over many decades than necessarily achievement. But when you have that opportunity to really go out there and engage with the people, you win. So for me to be here, to have traveled from San Francisco just for the purpose to be here with you is really a pleasure for me. And I want to give great gratitude to the principal, Dr. McCarthy from Excelsior Community College, for the opportunity that he's given my colleagues and I from AIL to engage with you. I've had the good fortune to visit Hawkins College, so I know the great work that Betty Young and others do there, so I think we're in good company. But I have to tell you, I was humbled by the immense that I saw today and that I heard from your minister and all the speakers that came before me. It is really, truly impressive. When we had our moderator earlier today, he talked about us looking at demystifying and also looking at ways to increase productivity. So, as we say in Silicon Valley, that was so long ago. That was this morning. I have new goals for us. All right, I'm going to read those for us. I think it's wonderful that we demystify and increase productivity. We should always do that. But I think from what I've seen, the moment that you have in Jamaica right now, we have to be even more ambitious. We have to move demystification to responsible use. Start getting that engagement with the technology to a next level and with purpose. We need to move beyond productivity and enable in Jamaica the next generation of innovators and builders. And by the way, I was given a headset because my other option was to wear a helmet. So I'm going to walk around. I might sit next to you, so apologies in advance. But I think we have to look at that. I think this moment is not one that we can be too hesitant, but we have to do things with good judgment. This is a time for action. This is a time for velocity. And in Jamaica, and I watch the Olympics, I know that you know about speed. But velocity is when you take speed with purpose in a particular direction, and in this case, to meet probably the most important objective that we have, to provide opportunity here in Jamaica for the citizens of Jamaica, and also for the many visitors that will come back. Although this is my first time in Jamaica, and I've been to many countries, I tell you right now, I will be back. What I see here is just fabulous, and I want to be part of that. So it's for very selfish reasons. I want to do something that I usually never do. When either Trace or Cass speak, I listen, we engage, we have conversations. After Jason Fye speaks, I take notes and I learn. Jason said something today that I want to kind of add to Jason. You said that innovation should not be reserved for Silicon Valley. Did you say that? Did I get that correctly? I wanted to see that because I live in Silicon Valley, all right? And I can tell you the following with 100% certainty. I lived in Silicon Valley for 35 years, so that's more than some of my AIL people have been in the planet, but that's okay. We won't hold that against them. Jason, human-centered innovation only happens outside of Silicon Valley. Please note that, Jason. It only happens outside of Silicon Valley. And one of the reasons that Intel, in my 25 years there, had me traveling because we can recreate many things in a lab, but we cannot recreate this. We cannot recreate the environment where humans truly engage with purpose to do something better for the community, for their country, and for themselves. That you have to go out and do that. I traveled a lot at Intel. I liked it, but it was with purpose. I was sharing earlier that it's not because when I traveled to these countries, I was just visiting the place that they wanted to take me. They took me the places where they were having problems. So I was better able to understand what we need to do as technologists to make the technology be of more use and value. But today's presentation, although I did spend 25 years at Intel, and later on after I unsuccessfully retired, I was approached by Jobs for the Future, which is a large nonprofit that works around workforce to help establish the Center for AI and the Future of Work. So I did that for a year and a half, and I figured enough to be in the center, I need to go outside again. So I'm really excited to be here with you, and I'm very grateful for my partnership and my relationship directly with the team from AIL. So the discussion today that I want to bring, and now that you've eaten, before you get too sleepy on me, but it's going to be a little bit about cooking again. In a way that, we have to bring some ingredients together that we heard earlier. We heard Trace and Cass and Jason and Hannah and all the other speakers talk about readiness, the importance of innovation, and bringing in education pathways. That's going to all have to come together together with people that are going to have these new capabilities, these new skills that they're going to bring to actually impact in potentially the workforce industry here. But I also think that one of the things that we don't talk about enough in AI is that AI also brings opportunities around entrepreneurship. I don't think that I would wish on anyone that they go spend 25 years in one company. I had my great experience. I did a lot of different things, yes. But the future is more about what's your passion? How can you look at that and bring value? I have had the luxury and opportunity to see these two gentlemen here sitting in the front row. Two entrepreneurs that came together with purpose and a mission. And I was a little surprised about them because in Silicon Valley, when you bring two entrepreneurs together, you know what they want to do? Go public. You know what these gentlemen wanted to do? Public good. They wanted my mic. There we go. They wanted to bring in opportunity for others just like they had found opportunities for themselves. And I think that that sense of mission is what attracted me and why I'm so happy that they have found you and we're all together now in this kind of mindset of innovation. But we have to bring all these pieces together. And it's not necessarily an easy journey, but most of the most important journeys, or maybe all of them, are not necessarily easy. There's going to be some obstacles around to overcome. There's going to be some times when we're working or not, and we have to go sometimes on faith, which sometimes we can be guided on that too. So the real question for us here as I go into my presentation is, how are we going to bring this together in a meaningful way that's actionable? So we just didn't have a great conversation and tomorrow nothing happened. So I hope to share, first of all, a little perspective of what's happening around the world. So you can see and you can take note of that, and we always learn from that. I'll also share a little bit, and this is where I have to be very understanding and respectful, that I am not an educator. Although I have been with many educators and I continue to learn from the educators, you are the experts. So I'm talking to you as a collaborator, as someone that's trying to enable what you do in a way that you can do it more effectively. So I will talk in some items around education. And I also will talk about industry and business and entrepreneurship and the things that we can look at as we think about AI. But let me first start with a couple of things to set the base. Is the mic okay? All right. When you look around the world, we have a couple things that come to mind. Question of access. My mic. Okay, we're good. Okay, so we've moved from just plain access. Can I get to the tools? Can I get to the internet? Well, it's still spotty. Listen, where I live in San Francisco, there are parts of San Francisco where I can't get internet connection either. So it's a universal problem. It's much worse in rural areas. I understand that. But it's something that, for the most part, we have been able to mitigate. But what's starting to be more compounding is the whole area of skills development, because the skills are changing. The requirements for the jobs are changing because the jobs themselves are changing. So skills development become a challenge, to say the least. The next part is execution, and Trey's talked about this. I was taught, and also the principal talked about this. Dr. McCarthy talked about that there's a lot of good ideas. Actually, there's a lot of ideas. Some may be good ideas, but even many of those good ideas never come to fruition. The execution part is really important. So at the end of the day, my discussion today is not about technology. It's about the future of Jamaica in terms of where and what actions you want to take to embrace the technology, understand what it can do, understand what it can't do, so you can provide a platform, an enablement platform for the next generation of innovators and builders. And when I say next generation, it's people my age. It's not just the young students that are coming out of colleges like here at Excelsior. It's all of us that are participating in this opportunity. The last thing that I wanted to say is something that I've recognized in my travels. The new digital divide scares me, because back about 15, 20 years ago, when I was working at Intel, if we saw the digital divide as you not having a computer, now everybody has a computer. You remember Nicholas Negroponte, 1 laptop per child? You know, we could have given 2 laptops per child. It didn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's not if you have a device, it's what can you do with it. How can you apply critical thinking and problem solving to solve something that matters to you, to your community, and to your country? The new digital divide is that we think that we've given students access, but they don't have engagement. The new digital divide is that we give them technology, and that with that, we think we have enabled them to a bright future ahead. We don't. We need the magic, the power, the intuition, the experience of teachers to help guide those students with these new technologies that will change. Today, it's OpenAI. Tomorrow, it's Anaconda. It's Little Fish. They'll come and go. But what doesn't change is that human need to have an understanding of why we're doing this, to what purpose, how do we sustain it, and what's the impact? And don't look at ChatGPT for those answers. Look at your teachers, look at your community, look at your peers. So again, as was said earlier, that doesn't change. The human contact is what's going to make a difference. The other part that I wanted to do, kind of the baseline, is that, you know, I've been around, as we all established already. I remember in the 80s where it was all about automation. Back then, they had a tool called Lotus 123. It was going to help you build a spreadsheet. This is before Excel, okay? That was the age of automation. Then in the mid-90s, we were automating everywhere because we had access. That was the age of access. We have now come to a point that I like to think of in terms, in a positive way, because I am an optimist, that we are in the age of outcomes, where the software learns you. You don't have to learn how to make a pivot table. I got to go to this menu, that menu, hit my finger like that, and make sure it's not Control-Alt-Delete. No. All of us that have used ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Peppy or whatever the next chatbot comes, you're more focused, possibly, on what you try to do. How do you go about that, rather than what keys and keystrokes you need to have? So in this opportunity that we have, where the software learns us, we have to bring our very best us so it can amplify that, elevate that to a new level, right? So that's an important consideration, why this technology shift, in my humble opinion, is different. Because now we do have the software to help us in a different way, where if we can give it leadership and direction, and I'll use that word, leadership and direction, it can help us take us to a destination that we can make judgment if it's the right one or not. And I think that's an important difference. I promised you that I would go around the world quickly, not in my travel log, although I could show pictures, I guess, but in the last 3 or 4 years, because my engagement with AI started in 2018, before it was fashionable. And to tell you the real story, I did AI because I was working with my team and said, okay, we're going to focus on emerging technologies. Somebody said, let's do cloud. Somebody said, big data. And I said, well, why don't we do it alphabetically and let's start with AI. This is a true story. This is in 2018 before the infamous day on November 30th, 2022, which was the release of ChatGPT, and now everybody had AI. It wasn't invented on November 29th. It had been there for a while. Some of us had been working on it, but now all of us, in theory, had access. And that changed the game. Well, what will our good friends from England, we all have a common heritage to England in some way, I do, although Spain too, they decided they would ban AI in schools. Let's start with that. That was the English approach for many of the universities with AI. And they quickly decided that maybe that's not a great idea. One, students were going to schools that weren't banning AI. Just because you ban something doesn't mean that you fix the problem and that people aren't going to use it anyway. So they decided to embrace AI. So if you look now at the National Plan for AI, and they have a very good one in the UK, it really incorporates AI as a foundational piece of learning. So good for our friends in England for doing that. I think Jamaica has been doing it from the get-go. I had a chance to visit with the Minister of Education with Estonia, most recently in Oakland, because we have a project with the Port of Oakland, and they came to visit me and some friends that I have there that are doing some cool stuff with AI. And they look at AI already as a companion. And if you look it up later, Estonia is actually a small country in the shadows of Russia that's doing phenomenally well because they've empowered their citizens not only with access, but with the right set of guardrails on how they can bring and use AI successfully. So we can learn from different countries. But I'll share with you right now that we're all at the beginning of the beginning. If you were to ask me in the US, tell me 1 or 2 states that are out of 50. Puerto Rico's still not a state, right? Okay. Out of 50 that are using AI, I probably would say Ohio, Massachusetts, and not much more. Not even California, because they have not looked at it as a statewide initiative. In Jamaica, when I hear what UNESCO's doing and setting these foundations for you, it's at country level, right? So you have already some advantages. And I think that my colleagues talked about, I'm from Puerto Rico, I think I may have mentioned that. So, we have this island resourcefulness, right, that comes with being someone in the islands, right? I'm a little bit more east, right? But still, we have that resourcefulness. The same thing with Estonia. They needed to do that. Speaking of islands, or island-type states, Singapore. I spent a lot of time in Singapore. It was mentioned here. Singapore has really embraced the concept of using tutors, incorporating what does it mean when you have proficiency, making the distinction between completion and capability, right? Not looking at students, did they finish the work? Did they finish the work? Yes. Okay, good for you. How did you do the work? What were you thinking? Tell me a little bit about the process. What tools did you use? Oh, you used ChatGPT, very good. Did you ask it questions about how it came up with some of the answers? Right, you have that kind of engagement. And now that's actually developing critical thinking that you're doing while you're using a tool that some of us fear could take that away from you, right? So there are good models. There are good models. Actually, the the principal engineer on my team, was so wonderful in Singapore that I was convincing him to come to California. He didn't realize the price of gasoline, but that's okay. Because he never drove in Singapore. Now he had to learn how to drive. So, people will make adjustments. But he brought with him a lot of expertise on how we can make this in a way that's understandable. Friend of my friends here, Anshul Sanak. The other part, and in India has been amazing in terms of technology, implementation, huge population, being able to be software mavericks. Some of the best software engineers are in India. Absolutely the case. Well, they look at now, with the pace of technology, it's no longer, what you learned in the book. It's not even when you learn in the weekly newsletter. It's not even the daily podcast. The technology is moving so fast that we have to look at calibrating around credentials and micro-credentials. Show me, great that you have a degree, I love it, but show me what you can do that's relative to me in terms of my business. So this kind of collaboration with industry that I talked about in making our soup, remember it was one of the ingredients. How are we doing that? And someone said, rightly so, the purpose of education is not necessarily employment, but it is part of the picture at some point. Have the full person, make sure that they have the skills that they need for life, but also be able to maybe become not employed, but an entrepreneur and start their own opportunity. So sometimes having these micro-credentials. I told the story, I think it was the other night, where I came from Intel. I was working on this program we were going to roll it out to community colleges, which we did. Our CEO came from a community college. This is true story. Department. I took his name off. I kind of changed a little bit what could be his resume, and I gave it to our head of HR, or the chief of staff of our head of HR. Let me give it to Jason over there. And she said, this is great. This person is fabulous, but we only hire people with a 4-year degree at Intel. Well, there lies your problem, Intel. You are not getting in with the times of where the talent is right now. And a lot of the work that we have that's the most innovative, I'm not talking about chip design, but the other, let's say, logistics operational parts that are also important to us, it may not be someone necessarily that has to have a 4-year degree. It could be someone that has been credentialed, has gone to Excelsior, has been able to show and demonstrate this capability, and that's the person we should be thinking about hiring. Not completely disqualify someone because of a degree, right? So I think that this is an important consideration that's changing. And I think that this creates opportunities for Jamaica. Because the fact that you have already had some benefit from seeing what other countries have done. I've heard, the work that you brought in from UNESCO, the fact that you understand the Singapore example. You have some learnings already that you can bring to the table that will help you get ahead. But let's talk a little bit of how we lead from here. And I want to talk about the strength that you have already that I think you're building on. First of all, when I was doing some research, and my colleagues here at AIL know this because every time I would do more research, I'm like, did you know they were doing this? And this is so cool. And I can't wait to meet some of the folks there that are actually driving this effort forward. You have laid down, I think, the important foundational elements, looking at policy, and we heard your minister speak beautifully about the work that's happening and the other speakers earlier today from education. You have focused around also workforce readiness in programs here like they have at Excelsior. You have focused also around human readiness, but you took that to the next level because then you partnered with UNESCO. And I know a little bit about UNESCO because in 2015, I was invited to Paris to talk to them about a new program they were coming up with. I was telling them about our digital readiness program, and somehow they called theirs readiness too, but we won't quibble about that. It is super cool, the effort and work that they have put in to make these assessments. It is fabulous. Again, the same brother that's always sending me stuff. I send them some things of what you're doing here, and they said, well, why can't the U.S. do that too? And I can't really answer the question without getting into some other leadership issues, but you have that advantage because you've been able to do that here. You're partnering with global organizations, and yes, fundamentally, you're acting locally, but you're bringing in best in class from all over the world. And I like to think that our participation is part of that wise decision that you're making, no pun intended with wise and the owl, but we'll talk about that later. The other thing is that your minister Andrew Whitley said, which was quoted, and I'm quoting him again, Jamaica chose not to wait and see. Jamaica chose to lead. Congratulations on that. So this leadership comes, again, with responsibility. Where's my Spider-Man people over there? There we go. And I went a little maritime on this, so sorry for that, a little too bright. But I thought I'd wake you up a little bit with this. When you look at AI and you look at AI learning in the skills standpoint, which I come from, not necessarily in the education standpoint, more holistically, you have awareness. Let's say that you're at the beach. Then you get on your first little sailboat and you start to work a little bit about access. Do I have Copilot? Do I have access to this? Do I have access to that? You haven't done anything yet. You've just, getting yourself ready. The next level, which is sometimes concerns me because people stop at that. Now I am literate. I know what it can do. I know what it can't do. That's great. But what are you building? How are you applying judgment? That comes when you get to that next level, which I call fluency, or many of us call fluency. I can know the alphabet. I can know grammar. Fluent, I'm a poet. Right? I can bring this and assemble it in a way that has purpose, that has meaning to me. The next level of this, and Trace and I talk about this often, about the importance of confidence. That you need a mile of confidence before you get that last mile or last meter of capability, right? You need to feel that what you're doing is something that you can do, and sometimes you do that through experimentation and testing, but testing alone is not it. Another thing that Trey said is that you have to look at this in terms of real projects, things that matter, that you can then find ways to scale it and add value, right? And that's where we get to outcomes. So the journey is one that we have to navigate through. There's a couple of, what did you call them? Landmines, did you say? Landmines, okay. We had landmines. In the Caribbean, we look in terms of hurricanes and things like that, but landmines too. We'll have that. So we'll talk about those too also. And I've already hit this a few times, and you guys have heard it too. I mean, how do you get to become more fluent? Well, it's like that old saying, how do I get to the best symphony hall in the country? You practice, you practice, you practice. The difference is, in this case, start practicing with things that matter to you or real projects, right? That it's important. And do that. And show what you've done. I do that with my team, and it probably drives them crazy. I do something in Notebook LM. I show them, and then I realize I should have not shown that one. I could do better, or what am I doing? But that whole idea of transparency and openness and show what's good and show what's bad, maybe it gets into over-communicating, but we're at a point at the beginning of the beginning where over-communication is okay. Because that feedback that you get is going to help look at ways that you can improve your approach and also look at your judgment and say, I thought this, but in reality, as I look at it now with another human telling me, it's different than what Claude was telling me. What's up, Claude? Right? You have to have that kind of external. Jim, one of our instructors talked about that. Sometimes you have to step away a little bit, clear your head, and come back to it, right? And apply the judgment. Reflect and iterate. And understand the value that you're delivered. So I think that this is one that we've covered quite a bit today. And the other one here that I want to go is I look at my kids and I look at myself. We're the greatest generation of consumers. We're the greatest generation of consumers. Nothing to be that proud about. We now need to enable the next generation of builders. And I think you're doing that here. And don't confuse because you're a user, which I don't think is a good term in any industry. But in the software, I use this. Great, you're a user of Copilot. Good for you. What are you building with that brings some value? So don't just be a user of the software. Oh, I love to use all the tools. Really? Okay, maybe you're using chat to test on Claude. Okay, but if you're just using the tools because, there's the tools out there, I'm a user. I'm moving away, Jason, from the power user term or whoever used that. And really what you want is that person with fluency that's taking and building and not so much how many times they tried, but how many times they were able to accomplish, right? And looking at that, and that's how you have to measure yourself. Because it's easy now to have chat, give me 10 versions of that. No, you want the version that you can discern is the right one for you and why, right? So the builder creates new values. Also, critical thinking happens at a much more accelerated rate when you're thinking about, I'm building this, what's the implication, what are the systems approach that we have to talk about. Dr. McCarthy and I were talking about the good old days, enterprise resource planning, SAP, right? When you do these projects and you're building, you have to have a systems view of the world. We don't use that term anymore, right? What's the systems view? What other things are being, no, the fail is because in your pocket, that app is amazing. But when you release it out to the distributor in Columbus, that app, not so good, right? It exposed data that we hadn't realized we were exposing to our competitors or worse, right? So you have to have that systems approach, and when you become in the builder space, you start to appreciate that. You also understand the importance of cybersecurity and fortifying and all these other things. It's a lot different than a user. It forces responsible use in a much more dramatic way, and it gets you to better outcomes. So, again, more happy news from Jamaica. I was looking and doing some research, and one of the things that you have done here, which is really cool, and it goes a little bit to the IKEA example that my colleague used. There's a chat, generative AI is being used at the visitjamaica.com, where it answers in 10 different languages. All right, that's pretty cool. Now, someone could say, wow, that's like 9 jobs someone could have had, right? 9 people we could have employed. You could look at it that way too. Or you could look at, now we can get visitors from 10 countries that may not have come here. And let me tell you, I'm guaranteeing you, once you come to Jamaica, you come again. You want that repeat business, get them the first time. And if you have to use AI to do that, do it. And I don't think it's taking employment away, it's bringing in a bigger share of wallet, like Cass brilliantly described with IKEA. The other thing that you heard your own folks here from the Ministry of Education is how you are understanding that education is fundamentally local, but you need to have a world view on what best practices can be adopted and adapted for the Jamaican context. That's all good. As a fellow person from an island, that's all good. We're going to, in Puerto Rico, we're going to make everything into salsa music anyway, but we'll borrow from different genres of music. We'll even borrow a lot from Jamaica because we always love the music from Jamaica, right? But we're going to localize it to our own. But you have to have an open view of what other countries are doing. And I think that having UNESCO and World Bank and others participating, and teachers that are now, over 700 teachers are now part of the program with UNESCO. That's fabulous. That's 700 teachers that, as Jason said, can be lighthouses for that next generation of innovators and developers, and giving them the guidance that they need to be successful. Because Chat, Gemini, Claude, Peppy, the next one, ain't going to do it for them. The teachers will. So that's the power that I see in your education investment. And last but not least, and certainly not least, I did a little bit of research on one of your entrepreneurs. Maybe some of you have seen her because she's been very well publicized. Marin McPherson. She's also a UN youth advisor. This is a multi-talented person you have in your island that's doing amazing work, and she is a builder, a creator, and solving community problems here around housing. And she's built an application, just like we saw the young ladies in Ridgewood, the similar style approach of maybe it was an adult that helped them look at the problem, but it was a collaborative team of their peers that said, we're going to do this. We're going to tackle this problem. We don't know how, but we know why, and we know what at the high level we need to deliver. Let's use the technology on the how part. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And that actually accelerates outcomes. So again, you're doing it here in Jamaica. I just wanted you to know the guy from Silicon Valley, right, is coming in, as he always does, to take note of the local talent, because that's where the technology gets proven and the technology gets improved. And the companies recognize that. Now that I've said all these great things, let me take you back, not to the landmines. We're going into kind of rough seas here. You have your life jacket on, my man? Okay, good. And again, Trace talked about these already, but I'm going to take them at the systems level, just a little higher. If you don't have people in the loop, it sounds so obvious. But, oh, we have a new technology project, and we're going to launch ChatGPT version 92, and it's going to be great. And wait, what are people doing? What is the type of, how do they learn these new technologies? What incentives are we giving them in terms of the time that they're going to commit to do this, to bring this on board, right? You have to look at the people side. I mean, I'm glad that chat works 24/7, and it doesn't, because sometimes it says, hey, you've had enough, come back in 2 hours. Really, chat? I needed you right now. Now you take a break, right? Claude does it even worse, especially if you're using 4.7. Anyway, don't get me started. So I'm kind of bitter about it. I got a slide that would have been here. Anyway, but just because they're working 24/7, I'm not. So you have to have the people side of how this has come together. The other thing, and again, Trace and many of us alluded to this, it's great that you learn this, and then you learn it in the classroom, and then you go do something else, right? If you don't bring together, why don't you bring, and I know you guys do this already, the teachers, but I'm still learning. Bring the problem into the classroom. Let's all talk about it. Before you start coding, why don't you talk speaking? Tell me what you're trying to do. Tell me what problem and opportunity you're seeing. Why don't we do a problem statement? Sounds cool, right? Why don't we do that before we get into, well, I'm going to do this API interface, and I'm going to use Codex from OpenAI or Claude's friend or Workshop, whatever. No. Let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish. And training, that's how you kind of grow. The next thing is prompts without judgment. And I'll have a little judgment on this. My wife of 33 years, God bless her. Really, now you know, God bless her. She says, oh, I did this, and we're going this, and, Chat told me we had to do this. And I'm like, Tina, I'm kind of in the AI space. We can't say Chat told you, right? Did you question it? Did you go back? Because, it's not Chat that's taking us there. You and I are going there. What do you think? And again, I wasn't that bad, but it was like the role playing here a little bit, because she would beat me up if I say that. But you know what I mean. It was just, you can't just pass through. Because let me tell you, Chat's going to say something to you. It said, Cass, you're really smart. Trace, Gemini thinks you're tops. You know, Claude, I don't know about you, Claude, right? Everybody's like, the chat GPTs are designed to please you. They're going to make you happy. They're going to think, that was the best thing ever. And then you say, that is so terrible. I hate what you did. You know, you have a good point. You're really smart. What I just told you is really bad. Really, Claude? I'm going to Gemini. Gemini says, they're all the same a little bit, right? Because they're predictive. You know, people even question if they're really intelligent. All right? Not to open the kimono too much, right? They're algorithms, right? And they want to tell you most of the time they are programmed to make you happy and to say, that was really good. That song you did in Suno, never heard about it. Little reggae? Oh yeah, the people in Jamaica are going to love that you're using artificial intelligence to do reggae music. And are they? Really? I don't think so. They'd rather I go buy an album or go to a restaurant and see some live music, chat. But they want to make me happy, right? So you got to be, you know, the best thing I do is ask chat. This is assignment now. Jason, I'm going to start doing assignments too. Ask chat, I use chat a lot, but use anyone. Something you really know about. Ask it something you really know about. Hey, chat, how do I make whatever, or how do I do this? And you're going to say, it's about 80% right. So all this stuff you're doing could be at least 20% wrong. Think about it. Just think about that. You start to use the technology for healthcare. And it's not a dedicated healthcare system. Healthcare, believe me. In Boston, I went to a research lab where they're predictive on cancers based on x-rays that the humans would never detect. I'm not saying that AI is not useful in that context, but know the context you're in. And start by making sure that if the government isn't putting your guardrails, or in your case, you're lucky because they're collaborating to help understand the pitfalls. But in many places, it's whatever you do, you do. You have to put the guardrails. And the same thing for the teachers with the students. You have to support them and understand that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And if we take the automotive industry very fast here, just because you can go 90 miles an hour doesn't mean you should do that in a school zone. Can I do it? Yes. Should I do it? Here's the consequence, right? So I think that we have to look at that with our eyes wide open. And then, here's another one that I see in business. You know, this thing that we hate to do, it's not that good. With AI, we can do it faster. Well, you hate to do, get that. It's not so good, stop. If you automate now something that is poorly designed or giving you results that are unpredictable when you need to have that level of predictability, don't do it. Just because you can do it faster with AI doesn't mean it's going to be a better answer with AI. It's just going to make you look stupid faster. And then the last thing, and again, we can never say enough about responsible use, so I have a slide on it. And it'll wake you up again, promise. Whew. And I think that my colleagues and everyone who spoke before me, Hannah and others, they've already covered this in detail. The point is you can never cover it enough. You can never do it early enough. Responsible use is not something we do after testing. It's something we do before design, right? Think about the implications. So if you stop worrying now on how you're going to do this crazy thing and you figure out should we and why and how we approach it from an implementation standpoint, it doesn't become a conversation about technology. It becomes a conversation about people and what's the impact. And you know what, chat, as much as it likes me, and Claude, as much as it thinks I'm okay, and the other one, they're not people. and I have to engage to make these pilots successful with people. And that's why these AI pilots fail many times, because we took the human out of the loop, as we said earlier, and we didn't look at holding ourselves accountable and using AI and verifying. Again, go back, ask a question of something you know about. It's going to make you think that Chad is not all that smart. It's okay, it's a good companion, it can help you in many areas, but let's be realistic about what you can do. And we've talked a lot about this, and here the teachers and Jason, who has background in this, we have to look at education slightly different in this light, or very different, however you want to look at it. We have to look at the process of coming up with the question or assignment or response. Is there a question? No? Okay. I thought maybe somebody had a question. The students have to talk about the capabilities that they demonstrate. This was done beautifully. You did it on time. Great. Now that we have the time, since you did it so quickly, let's talk about what was your thinking on this? What approach did you take? And put it aside for a moment and tell me, what are the implications of all of this? You think, now that you've done this so fast and it looks so beautiful, oh my God, very wordy. When did you start using M dashes? I like that. It's beautiful. Tell me more about this. How did you work on this? Did you collaborate? Peer review. Oh, peer review is having Gemini check on Claude? Really? Is that a thing? I don't think so. The same thing in business. We've been doing a lot of work. I've been, thanks to our good friends from AIL, in understanding that the whole issue of AI adoption and absorption and using it with fluency is in the domain of all of us, right? The other day, I'll tell you another story. NBC, whatever, I was looking for the Weather Channel, but I got to see NBC, and there was the head of the IMF. All right, the lady that's the head of the IMF. And under the banner, I think I may have sent you that picture, it said, AI or die. Really? Are we going to get that dramatic? Have you looked at the news in the world? There's other issues. All right? Why don't we talk about thrive with AI? Instead of using it to weaponize, why don't we look at solving conflicts? Right? Maybe, but let me not go there. But I think that we have to be realistic and call people and say, head of the IMF, I had a lot of respect for your financial acumen, but AI or die doesn't work. Tell that next chat you do, not good, no bueno. And again, we had a discussion, Doctor, you and I talked about all the opportunities here in Jamaica, and you have so many. I mean, like I said, your brand, oh my gosh, everybody knows about Jamaica. Not as many people that know Jamaica have been to Jamaica. So we got to work on that, right? But we can all relate. You have such a strong, authentic, grounded cultural heritage that no matter what storm comes, and I say this from Puerto Rico where we at times have issues on this topic, you stay strong to it. That is one of your many superpowers. But now, pick one or two things that you're going to do brilliantly in some of these areas. Don't try to do 50 things in every segment. Pick that, commit to that, and drive that. And, you're already doing great in education. We can always do better, right? I have one for you, Dr. McCarthy. That lab, what do you call it, the AI lab? I like that. But when I hear what you're doing around the lab, to me it sounds like a global showcase for excellence in human-centered innovation. A lab is something we did in 1980s. Come on, computer lab. Who went to the computer lab? I did, right? They didn't have Macintosh back then. I did computer lab, right? Here you go. You can have that. That's a Brian chat. You can keep it. All right? But that is what we need. We have to think differently. Doctor, I don't want to go to your lab. I want to go to your innovation center. And let me tell you, your innovation center, from what I've seen in the last 2 days, is going to be a global showcase. The people from Singapore are going to come see your lab, which is now an innovation center, all right? That's what it's going to happen. That's what we're going to do that. You can have that. And you have the creative economy. Everything that you bring, all that makes you is so unique. I'm a little jealous. But anyway, we'll get over it. So 3 things, in addition to the assignment of ask chat something you really know about so you can embarrass it, humble it a bit. Let's build our fluency with the practice on and things that either are passionate to your students, like the children that, or not, they're not children, the young students that wanted to do something with the zoo and help those zoo professionals spend more time with the animals, right? That's a great example. By the way, just a little aside, I got to work at JFF. Just as I was coming in, there were over 1,000 submissions in the US for a project. And that example of the zoo was selected because it met the criteria of empowering. It met the criteria of responsible use. It met the criteria of engagement with mentors and educators to help guide, because these were students from Hawkins College. So some of the examples you've seen today are pretty brilliant in this area of building fluency with real work. The other part that you can do, and you have such an opportunity, and I have a minute left, is grow local builders. And don't measure today because we had a full house. Let's talk about in a month what an amazing project or an amazing endeavor that you started. So I leave you with these last thoughts. I am optimistic, but I'm also very confident, because here in Jamaica, I find the 3 ingredients that guarantee that not only your next emerging technology project will be successful, but everything else that you want to do in the technology space. And I'll give you them to you right now. The first and foremost is the commitment of your leadership. Not only the good doctor that's here and's been here all day and was here last night till 11 p.m., but the row of dignitaries that committed their time to be here, and all of you that are leaders in the education space. So you have the commitment of the leader. Check that. The next thing you have is collaboration with industry. And this way, I'm going to expand the word industry to include international partners like UNESCO and others, and Intel and others, and AIO and others that come in and are part of your ecosystem. You're not a user in theirs, they're a contributor to yours. That's what matters. So you have that. And lastly, and this is an example of what Excelsior is creating a community of innovation. Those are the 3 C's, but for you, I'm going to add another one. Because of the tenacity, because of the resourcefulness, and because of the velocity that you move, you have the courage to take that step. Thank you very much.